All right, cool. We're recording.
We're recording?
We're recording. Yes, we are. Oh man, what is today?
I dazed out for a bit. I was just trying to remember the last time we met with Naja.
Yeah, with Nija.
Was that in December? Oh,
Uh,
the New Year had started
no, that
already.
was January, wasn't it?
Okay. Okay.
I thought it was. Now you have me wondering. Cause what's today? It's already February
The
2nd.
second. 2
That's
2.
crazy.
2225.
2225. And I can tell you real quick when we had that video with Nija, which I think went really well.
Yep.
She actually posted a little short on hers.
Oh,
I want
yeah?
to learn. I want to know how to do that. Like I don't know
Oh,
how
I
easy
didn't
it
know.
is, but I've never done a short.
She posted a short of our
Yeah,
interview
yeah,
on her,
yeah.
what? Was it TikTok? Was it?
It was on YouTube.
Oh,
So
yeah?
she let me see if I can find it here. So yeah, because she posted this 3 weeks ago, and she posted the whole video unedited.
Oh, she posted the whole video.
Yeah, yeah, and then I don't know if you watched the one I put up there, but I didn't really do editing, but I added some text in, like when we were quoting scripture. I went
Oh,
ahead and put
nice.
the scripture verse in.
What's
Like
her,
what?
what's her YouTube?
It's Nija, just Nija,
Okay.
and let me see. Yeah, so that was
We'll find her.
January 7th, right?
Okay. Um,
Yeah, it was January 7th. So yeah, it's been
I
a
don't.
couple weeks.
Oh, drop the P10. Oh, she used a different.
Yeah, so that's hers. That's the one she posted. And then if you go to our page,
What- I wonder if she got
I
it.
don't know if she links us in there or not. You'd have to actually find our page in there.
Does she link us?
I'm not sure if she did or not. Did she? I don't think she did. That kind of stuff we have to get better at.
Yeah, we could. Well, that would be on her end.
Yeah, I mean we got to do stuff like that too. I usually link stuff in the comments if
We
I
should ask her to link to our
yeah the
thing in
link
the
link,
comment in
link
the comment section
yeah.
or like the description. Um, and then ours.
Let me see if I can find that short that she
Oh, the short was in YouTube.
it's either YouTube or on Instagram. Let me see. Let's see. This the one?
I love the way you're editing the
Oh yeah, so
thumbnails and
she
stuff.
did this short. I didn't see this one, but she did this short, but that wasn't the one that I would looked at today.
Where's that? Where does she have that posted?
It's on just
Oh,
just Nigel one
on YouTube.
on YouTube.
Let's see.
Oh, this is the one I saw earlier. So yeah, she looks like she put a couple shorts on there. She had this one and that one.
Oh, that's cool.
But I need to actually something that I'm starting to realize, unless you know better, since you're a sound guy.
Mm.
Um, you know what? I'm gonna move this mic on you because I just want to make sure that it stays pointed at you. Sorry. Um, so
Adam encounters a demon.
yeah, yeah. You remember me talking about that?
Yeah.
I don't know if I did a very good job describing that or not. Like
You
it
know,
was hard. It's hard to like portray. Like on the one side, anybody listening to that story just be like, oh yeah, you're just interacting with some guy that was drunk.
oh,
But like you had to. It was one of those things where you almost had to be there
mm-hmm,
to kind of just see the way that guy changed.
mm-hmm,
Um, and I'm not one to focus on stuff like that. Like
mm-hmm,
I'm just as in some ways I'm just as worldly as the next person. Like
mm-hmm.
I've been convinced by mental health and
Yeah.
everything can be medicated.
Yeah.
And like I'm inclined to think that people are just their own worst enemy, which probably most of the time is true. Like I don't think we probably encounter things like that more than we realize, but it's not as prevalent as some people think it is either.
Mhm.
Like just because someone's a jerk doesn't mean they're possessed,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
But we never know. You never know. We
Yeah,
may
you wouldn't
encounter it,
know.
and it just looks like a normal situation.
yeah,
Something in disguise, hidden behind a veil or
yeah,
something.
yeah.
I
And
saw something earlier actually
what's that?
about, and I knew this about sound, how our ears only perceive certain frequencies on both ends, the lower frequencies and the higher frequencies.
Okay.
We start becoming deaf to certain frequencies.
Right.
But I think those sonic frequencies also have an attachment to light, and there's a certain degree. I don't know what the measurement of light are in that sense, like the way the frequencies are to sound, but also with light and the visual plateau, there's things we don't perceive, our eyes can't perceive.
Oh yeah. So like the whole entire this is a very scientific question. So visible light is a very small sliver of the electromagnetic spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
So,
There's
right.
there's,
So,
but that makes
so
me
like
think on
radio,
the spiritual
yeah, right.
side.
So like radio waves
Mhm.
and radiation, like I mean, that whole spectrum. What we see is visible light. You start to fall off of one end, you start going into like the ultraviolet
Mm-hmm.
light, which like like insects can see it, and we can't. But like the whole entire electromagnetic spectrum has, it's not. So I want to make sure I'm careful. So there is an overlap, but like what we perceive as sound compared to what we perceive as light
Mm-hmm.
are different. But you do have some weird, when it comes to waves and how those work, there's all kinds of crazy math involved there. Like you can go down deep and long on that stuff. There's some interesting things. I don't pretend to be an expert at it, but I know
a
exactly
little
what
bit
you're
about
talking about.
sound waves,
Yeah.
a little bit, and then it's called frequencies because of just how frequent the wave repeats itself. It
Yeah,
loops.
right.
So higher frequencies have
Exactly.
shorter,
It's like a higher frequency.
frequencies. So they those are the higher pitch sounds,
Right.
and they travel. How is it?
It's like it's like a dog whistle, right? Dogs can hear a dog whistle,
Yeah.
but humans can't because we just can't perceive
Right.
that high of a
But
pitch.
the lower frequencies, they're like wider.
Yeah.
So like subwoofers, which is why sometimes you can be at a concert and you just feel the low end, but you don't really hear it unless you're like miles away. All you're hearing is a
Right.
because that's the low frequency traveling farther.
Yep.
And speaking of concerts, you were just at a Toby Mac concert, right?
Yeah, that was fun.
How'd that go?
Yeah, it was really good. So Toby Mac was there, Kane was there, and then who was it? Ryan, someone. I'll be honest. I went to that concert knowing that I knew who Toby Mac was, but not having any specific songs that I could say it's like, oh, that's a Toby Mac song. But I was pretty confident that I'd go there and be like, oh yeah, I know this song. Oh yeah, I know this song. And that's exactly what happened.
And it was fun?
Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, they packed a lot of artists into it. It was called the what's it called? The Hits Deep Tour.
I like a few. There's a handful of Toby Mac songs that I like. I'm not a big fan of the whole repertoire, but I can definitely hear how some of those songs are probably way better performed live than listening to like on a radio or something. But
and
there's
Crowder was there.
There's one that I like. Every little thing.
Yeah,
That was really good.
Yep.
And then I was made to love you. I don't know if he performed that
He
one.
probably did. He did. There was one time where he said, "I'm going to play 5 songs in 5 minutes."
Oh yeah.
So he like put a minute on some of his like past hits,
Yeah.
a minute on each, and they
Also,
just
maybe he mixed it in there.
yeah, he probably mixed it in. But yeah, so they had, and Crowder was there, and I like Crowder's stuff. Crowder has some good stuff. That guy's beard keeps getting bigger and bigger every time I see him. We actually well, go ahead.
Well, the music and those frequencies and stuff. I saw this video the other day. I think it's called cymatics. Cymatics is a sonic term, but I don't really understand fully how it's being used. But I saw how they I don't know. You know, Etch a Sketch.
Yeah.
You know how it's like tiny little like sand or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's like a powdered metal, I think.
A powdered metal.
Yeah.
I think they do that, like on some kind of sheet, and then they play audio, and then the vibration
turns into
has
like
a
an
shape.
turns into like electrostatic or something. Oh,
Yeah,
I see what
and
you're
so
talking about.
it turns into a shape, right?
Yeah.
So these are studies that go into like how, like certain songs use certain frequencies
Yeah.
that tap into like dark stuff, right? Like they'll say like the 808 drum like that hip hop uses. That's why they're like the low end frequencies, you perceive them instead of actually hearing them.
Okay.
Which is why viscerally you want to dance to them and move. So they have like sonic
It's like subliminal.
and
Yeah.
I kind of do buy into
Yeah.
this stuff because like there's something called Afro Cuban rhythms, right? Where it has something called syncopation, right? So when you hear a song, usually it's like on
Are you
4/4.
gonna tell me that a syncopated rhythm is demonic?
Well, I don't really I believe that they could have had a background in that
Yeah.
because of like it's coming from like ritualistic
Like witch doctors and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously not every song that's
Right.
syncopated is gonna be demonic.
But you know that
it-
used to be like a thing, right? There used to be like Christians would argue over whether like a drum set should ever find
yeah.
its way inside a church.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Like there's
No,
no.
I'm not opposed to drum sets or like
I know you're
to
not.
beats.
I know
I mean, I make
Yeah,
beats,
yeah,
but
right.
what I'm saying is understanding the production elements of stuff. I can see how things that have more order may be attributed to God, and things that have disorder are
Yeah.
attributed to not being godly. Now, I'm not
Yeah.
saying it's accurate, but there's a lot of truth to a lot of things because of the backgrounds and origins, like rituals and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So, but hold on, let me finish my thought. The cymatics, when they play like yeah, I take this with a grain of salt, but they were playing like Drake music and like secular music, and the shapes were very disordered, very
Okay.
like. And then when they would play like Christian songs, the shapes will start taking into geometric, more organized patterns because of the frequencies that the producers chose to make these songs in, and a lot of shapes took on cross shapes. It's interesting to see, but the reason I bring this up is because of that other realm where we don't see. You know, we could probably derive something from scripture that what we don't see, that other world. And when you go to these like concerts, like EDM concerts, and they start flashing like lights and like really subliminal quick messages, if you slow down the videos, there'll be like hidden messages, weird faces. And from what I understand from going to like big Christian concerts, it's like people get that sensation of like, wow. I mean, I'm not sure if Toby Mac gives that impression, but maybe more like worship music, where people say, man, just in a big crowd of everyone worshiping, it kind of gives a glimpse into what being in heaven would be like, glorifying God.
I believe that.
Versus when you go to something secular and dark stuff are happening, drugs and alcohol, intoxication
Right.
are being involved, sex. I can see how in those realms, those lights, those sounds do play a part in the experience of darkness, And there's this Christian rapper, Andy Mineo, who when he first came out, he had a song, and he said in one of the songs, "Be careful who you wave in your hands at the concerts," because sometimes you go to secular music
yeah.
and wave your hands, and it's a form of worship, and you don't even know what you're worshiping.
I mean, you're totally right, and I think we were talking about this
Were we?
before. I think we touched on this, but it's worth talking about again because
Well, you were just at a Christian
You're right.
concert, and I'm just saying, who's to say? I mean, this is my imagination running wild, but who's to say you go to a certain concert and you're amongst angels and celestial beings who are also in that worship attitude in those realms that we don't see, versus you go to a secular concert where the lyrics, syncopated rhythms, and things like that are all working together.
have you heard the Houseplant song Audio Adrenaline?
No.
Yeah, you need to hear that.
But who's to say that at these concerts, where these things are all added up to give like a dark worship.
Right.
You're not amongst demonic things
I-
that may be seen like how you saw that guy that it just looks like
So-
a normal person.
So where I would want to take that is, I've been to, I've been in really good times of worship where I feel exactly what you're describing, and I'm just like, I'm into it. But I have also been to secular concerts and had, if not the same feeling, similar feelings. Like that, it's almost like
Yeah.
a euphoric feeling. And some people would just look at that and say, like, well, that's just a that's just something that happens on everybody's psyche. It's natural. So some people would look at that and say, well, that just implies that really it's just a natural biological thing that you're happening, and you're just getting excited, and you're having this feeling, because it happens both in a reverent, worshipful setting that's directed to God, but it can also happen in a demonic ritual or just a secular setting. So they would say, well, look, it just goes to show there's no significance. Where I would look at it and say, actually, that shows me the significance. It's either on the one side it's directed where it belongs, or it's hollow,
Yeah.
or deceptive.
Yeah.
So
Perfect. That's what I'm trying to say.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Exactly.
So I think that's good. Yeah, and I've thought about that a lot, because I've had that feeling, and it is. I think the distinction is one is meaningful. One is actually like, oh, this is like being directed at my Heavenly Father. This is being directed at the one who's saving me, the one who's worthy of this reverence. Where the other one is a distortion,
Yeah.
and
these distortions,
it pulls you away from that.
And I used to DJ, I produce music, and I'm a little bit schooled on music production, music orchestration, and there are intentional things that producers do to convey certain ideas and messages subliminally through music.
Yeah.
The idea of a chorus, the hook, what you're singing, is kind of like that union of everyone coming along to focus on just that one topic, right? This is also supplemented with instruments that you use and frequencies that you decide to tune these instruments to. When you do what's called like EQing, equalizing, you cutting off certain frequencies or enhancing certain frequencies.
Right.
That this is not only like I'm not trying to say something like trippy. I'm saying even scientifically, there's certain,
Right.
like I said, the low end theory, like the lower frequencies, you don't really hear them, you perceive them, you feel them.
Yeah.
So those are the ones that make you move and dance. That's why when you hear a good bass, you wanna
Yeah.
move to that bass,
Yeah.
So who? That's all created by God, right? But we humans have a tendency to pervert good things.
Yeah.
And take
for sure.
take those tricks and take those things that God allowed us to be able to play with and create music to thwart it into something that's gonna subliminally control the masses.
Well, Lucifer's
Exactly.
backstory, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I mean, and I don't know where do you find that is that in Daniel?
I don't know.
Where he talks about Lucifer, that scriptures about Lucifer. It's a pretty messed up scripture verse, actually.
But this, I'm not saying this to say, if we already discussed it, I don't want to discuss it again.
Oh,
The
we
only
can.
reason I brought it up is because of how you told about your story of seeing demonic thing.
Yeah, you see the spiritual in that, right?
And it may, for some people, be like, well, that could have just been a drunk person or something. But it could have just been something that was from another realm disguising itself as normal,
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that. We actually, where is this? See if I can find it.
Bien así calado con mi pollo guisado.
Oh, maybe it's Ezekiel. Ezekiel 28:17. Let's see if that's it. Let me see if I can find it here. I'll cut this part out.
Getting a nice, beautiful Florida day
It is
in
beautiful.
February.
Very nice.
For all you up there in New York, Ohio, got
Yeah.
that cold.
Yeah, winter's over.
Winter's over here. I love this weather.
Ezekiel
It's like a
28.
smell, a vibe in Florida that
Yeah, there
when
is.
this warm weather comes back,
It's almost a little muggy.
yeah, it's humid.
So it says, starting at Ezekiel 28:15, it says, "You were blameless in your ways from the day you were created, till unrighteousness was found in you. In the abundance of your trade, you were filled with violence in your midst, and you sinned. So I cast you as a profane thing from the mountain of God, and I destroyed you. O guardian cherub, the midst of the stone's fire. Your heart was proud because of your beauty. You corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor. I cast you to the ground. I exposed you before kings to feast their eyes on you. By the multitude of your iniquities in the unrighteousness of your trade, you profaned your sanctuaries. So I brought fire out from your midst that consumed you, and I turned you to ashes on the earth in sight of all who saw you. All who know you among the peoples are appalled at you. You have come to a dreadful end and shall be no more forever." And then there's a verse that talks about how, like, he was like almost like a walking instrument. It describes him as like an organ, or like a pipe organ.
Mm.
Let me see if I can find that. Um, this is like one of the theories I've heard thrown around more than once. Oh, actually, I just was past it. So if you back up to Ezekiel 28, 13, it says, "Moreover, the word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, raise a lamentation over the king of Tyre, and say to him, Thus says the Lord, you are the signet of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was your covering, sardius, topaz, and diamond, beryl, onyx, and jasper, and sapphire, emerald, and carbuncle. I don't know, it must be some kind of stone. And crafted in gold were your settings and your engravings. On that day you were created, they were prepared. You were an anointed guardian cherub. I placed you. You were the holy mountain of God. In the midst of the stones of fire you walked." Oh, I wonder if that's there's one that talks about him like being like, and maybe someone can drop it in the comments, but something talking about like it betrays that he was like the head musician, like
Right.
the head of the
Yeah,
choirs.
yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's
Which verse is that?
I don't know.
Let me see if
I mean,
can
I've heard it
find.
my whole life, but
Yeah, I think we need to. I think we need to find that verse. The workmanship of your timbrels and pipes. Maybe
Ezekiel.
it's Ezekiel 28:13, but the way the ESV has it, it's not as clear. So let me see. Okay, if I see Ezekiel 28:13, says, "You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was your covering." Sardis. Okay, so let me see how it reads in like a New King James Version. Ezekiel 28. So it's the second half of verse Maybe this is where I was seeing words I didn't understand. Because it says the workmanship of your timbrels. What are timbrels? Look up the word timbrels. Timbrels. The workmanship of your timbrels and pipes.
Or similar instrument.
And pipes. The workmanship of your timbrels and pipes was prepared for you on the day you were created. So yeah, so that's the verse that alludes to. Now I got to go back to the ESV and see what it says.
So it says some interpret this to mean that Lucifer was created with musical instruments built into him. Music in heaven. Music is mentioned in the Bible as a part of worship in heaven. For example, Revelation 5:8 and 15:2 mention harps used in worship. And then before his fall, Lucifer was an anointed guardian cherub who served the Lord. He was likely involved in praising God. Our explanation was that Lucifer was a seraph, one of the highest choirs of angels who directly saw and adored God. He was also known as the anointed guardian cherub. So I guess it never really says directly
it doesn't.
in the Bible that, okay.
Yeah, but a lot of people, and I guess it's an extrapolation.
Yeah, because I've heard this my whole life.
Yeah, that he was basically in charge of the choir. And maybe it's like somebody popularized the idea that, like Satan was basically in charge of the praise and worship directed at God, which, I mean, he obviously has a very prominent position, which would make sense, and that he just started to get proud. Like, he started to think highly of himself. And, yeah, you can throw it over there. So, and I don't know, there was it was an old, I don't even think I could bear to watch it now, but there was an old Christian documentary, probably from the 80s. I think the title of it was called Hell's Bells. You could probably find it on YouTube if you looked for it. And I mean, the whole entire thing about that documentary was to show how if you played certain rock music backwards, you'd find hidden messages in it and stuff. And it was like, part of me was kind of like, all right, I'm not sure what to do with this. But it's like, let me put it this way. Like, I'm not discounting the fact, especially just in the message, like just in the worldly messages that are in rock music. And I remember having this debate with, when we were kids, my one step sibling was criticizing us because we all listened to like acid rock. So it was like Pink Floyd and Leonard Skinner and The Doors. So like we're listening to stuff that would be like bad music. And then
Black Sabbath.
Yeah, Black Sabbath, of course, things like that. Yeah, any kind of rock.
Yeah.
And like he and a lot of people obviously their age were listening to like pop. So I don't know who the pop music was back then, like Cyndi Lauper and whoever, right? Like, so it was like Madonna.
Yeah.
And it's like, so like the pop music, he's like trying to make the claim like that was better music. And my brothers did something clever. It was just like, well, let's just compare the lyrics. And the lyrics on both fronts were crap, right? It was all about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Like very stereotypical. Getting money. And it was all very, very worldly. And so like, just on that front alone, I mean, we should all like take pause and realize that most of the music that we listen to that we really enjoy, it's not directing us towards God.
And if you're gonna go by the orchestration and the instruments, there's Christian rock, Christian pop.
Right.
So it's not really even the beat either.
No. Well, that's why you should listen to the Houseplant song by Audio Adrenaline.
Yeah.
Because that's like whenever that song came out, and I don't know when that was, probably sometime in the 90s, whenever like contemporary Christian music was like first starting to take off, maybe late 80s, and that's what the whole song is about, is the syncopated rhythm will make your soul rot. So he's like, the whole song is about him doing an experiment by taking houseplants, and the one houseplant he plays like Mozart and Beethoven, and the other houseplant he's playing like death metal, trying to do an experiment to see if the one will die. And his neighbor gets mad at him, because he's just making a bunch of noise. But his neighbor's a Christian, so he starts telling him about Jesus.
Yeah. Well, I like syncopated rhythms. That sounds cool, but it just basically means it's off the 1, 2, and 4. 1, 2.
I mean,
3,
I know,
and it's kind of like just catching up, but
it's not even a debate anymore, right? Like people don't really talk about it, but whenever I was a new Christian, like that stuff was still splitting churches. Like if someone brought in something that had a rhythm to it, there were people that got nervous. I mean, I was kind of at the tail end because when I was first saved 30 years ago, it was already starting to become a lot more commonplace where churches were adopting the model where you have a worship team. You don't just have an organ that you just sing hymns, but like the people that just had the organ and just sang the hymns, they looked down their noses at people that had a band go.
But some music that is syncopated is used for like rhythm or for rituals,
right?
Like in salsa, right?
Yeah.
It's salsa music, which is Latin. It's Latin music. It's really American because it's from New York, really. People say it's Puerto Rican, or it combines Puerto Rican genres, Cuban genres, and some American genres. In that time when salsa came out in New York by Puerto Ricans and Cubans and other Latin American people, but they also incorporated some jazz, some funk, and it was just predominantly Spanish music, Latino-made music. But salsa is really, I believe, is an American genre, is a New York genre.
Okay.
Right?
I didn't know that.
But it takes bomba y plena from Puerto Rico. It takes like son montuno and guaracha from Cuba. It could take elements of cumbia from Colombia, and they mix it in, and that's why it's called salsa.
Okay.
Because it's a salsa. It's a mix of a lot of things.
I didn't know that.
Right? Yeah. There's songs in salsa.
I just figured because it was Hispanic and they like salsa.
No, it's called salsa because it's a salsa of things. It's a salsa of genres.
Yeah,
right?
That makes sense.
That turn into this one genre. So, like for example, there's a song from an artist called Hector Lavoe who passed away. He was Puerto Rican, and the song is called Agua Nile, right? And that just translates to Nile water from the Nile, right, in Egypt. And I think that song has background in Santeria, which is a Caribbean or like a Cuban, Puerto Rican, like Caribbean style of voodoo, where they dress like in all white. I don't really know. I mean, you got to ask somebody who was in it that knows better. But that Nile water, I think it's like I don't really know, correct me if I'm wrong, but from my understanding of growing up in New York around like a lot of these boutiques, these what they're called. Niger was talking about them in the last, like in New York, every corner there's, what are they called, man? Botanical, like, they have little idols, like little Virgin Marys, candles. They have all kinds of saints.
Chakras or what? I don't know. She was mentioning some witchcraft things.
Yeah, it's like a witchcraft thing.
I don't know. What's a chakra? She mentioned that too.
I think chakra has to do with like yoga and Hindu stuff. But what I'm talking about is more like the Santeria stuff and the like where like some of these Catholics buy their saints.
Okay.
And Virgin Marys and Saint Lazarus, and they have all kinds of like little statues, little idols, and then they do witchcraft in that. This is like a known thing in New York, right? And
so crazy.
Nile water, I think, is a product that they sell. Like, I don't know.
They claim it's from like the actual Nile River.
And they're supposed to have some kind of involvement in Santeria. So the song is a salsa song which has syncopated Afro-Cuban rhythm to it because it's a salsa song and it's dancing, but you hear like chants and you hear like these kind of like voodoo sounding things, and the singer saying Agua Nile and he's singing Nile water, so a lot of songs like that do have, because of the cultural tie in the Caribbeans to the Santeria culture, the voodoo culture, they put it in their music.
Yeah.
And people just dance to it and don't even know that they're dancing.
Yeah, I mean, and like, I've actually been convicted by this more than once where, like, I mean, I like to dance. I like to go out and dance, and I've been to weddings and things. We're out there dancing. And
shake your tail feather?
Yeah, especially now, like where we are now, since a lot of the music that we listen to is, it's not in English, so I don't even know what the lyrics are.
Mm-hmm.
So there are times I'm out there dancing and I'm getting off the dance floor. I'm like, what was I out there dancing to? It's like, what kind of crap was I at least like appearing to endorse?
Yeah.
Because who was it? My one coworker was talking about Bad Bunny.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, you like Bad Bunny? I'm like, who's Bad Bunny? Like, I don't know. And it's like, yeah, his lyrics are really bad. I'm like, I wouldn't know.
yeah.
Like, I would have no clue.
But it sounds good.
Yeah.
Because they're using the bass that speaks to your body
Right.
viscerally. Like you want to experience that, the raw. Right. And then there's like harmonics that are traveling and sending a message to your brain to enjoy it and be euphoric. But the lyric on top of it is telling you,
I'm probably gonna need some grace for some stuff in my life.
Yeah, but I'm saying, I mean, I'm not saying this in a judgmental way. I'm saying it more like in an educational
it's an awareness.
Way. Awareness.
It is an awareness thing.
Like you
so
be aware of it, and then you do what you want with that.
Yeah. So like, I've been on a different side of this conversation too, which I found equally odd. And actually, it was a buddy of mine. He found himself going to, him and his wife, they found themselves going to a pretty legalistic little Baptist church that they had that mindset. I mean, this was not even that long ago, but they had that mindset that like all contemporary Christian music is demonic and that no Christian should listen to it. So my buddy was, at the time, like he was a relatively new Christian, so he liked all kinds of secular music. And I remember having a conversation with him because he was being convinced by his pastor that contemporary Christian music was bad. It was deceptive. And I mean, and you could probably find Christian contemporary music that has lyrics that, and I found it too. Like there are some
they're like not even biblical. They're and it's all about me.
Yeah,
and you did this for me.
So like in one sense, I can respect that there are definitely songs out there that I think a knowledgeable Christian should say, like, I'm not so sure that this is really representative of a good worship song.
Right.
But on the other hand, like, as much as it was just like a wholesale rejection of all contemporary Christian music, this buddy would still listen to secular music. So I'm like, all right, well, you're sitting here feeling self-righteous because you reject, based on your church, you reject contemporary Christian music because you can definitely find instances.
But then you're listening to secular.
But you'll still listen to secular music, which is like unapologetically worldly.
Yeah, but not to justify that, but I guess the train of thought with that is this one's trying to deceive me. This one I know what I'm getting. Right. You know what I mean? This one is leading me a path of it's lie. I think I'm doing this, but I'm really not doing that. But this one, I know exactly what I'm doing. You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah.
It's like me when I'm driving and I'll put DMX. It's like it'll take me back to like when I and I'll play it and I'll be like, okay, I know this feeling. Okay, maybe I should change this. Yeah. But I know exactly what I'm listening to.
And you know, like I'm not judging because I mean I listen to a lot of different types of music when I do. Let me take that back. I don't listen to a ton of music on my own, but I will listen to a mix of music. So and usually there's a nostalgic feel to it. Like just there's some really good, well orchestrated stuff from like the 70s and 80s.
For me,
it's
really not only the nostalgic stuff; it's the cultural part, the artistic ties to where I grew up and what I experienced with that music, and I can appreciate the art behind it, the lyrics, the composition, the artists themselves, what they represent. Because I don't expect anybody to be perfect. Even Christians don't have like.
And there's some interesting stories to tell too. And I don't know, like you and I probably have different repertoire, like different genres that we gravitate to. But like
we both like polka. I know that.
Polka.
You're into polka, right?
Polka, like polka music. Oh yeah, sure. Why not? I mean, I wouldn't go out of my way for it.
What are your go-to genres?
You ever hear the band Kansas? Like,
Oh, they were weren't they in the casino the other
oh,
day
I don't know.
performing?
I don't know. Are they still even playing? I mean, I think they broke up a long time ago.
I think they had a performance the other
Maybe.
day at the casino.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, yeah.
Because like Dustin, the song "Dust in the Wind."
No.
I'm sure you'd know it if you heard it.
Sing it.
I don't want to sing it.
What, it's bad?
No, it's actually a good song. It's a very philosophical song. It's all about talking about how we're dust in the wind.
Hmm.
If you heard it, I know you'd know it.
Hum it. How does it go? What's the melody?
It's here. I'm just gonna find it. But while I'm finding it, a lot of Kansas's songs have like a philosophical undertone, and the lead singer of Kansas got saved, so he became a Christian after Kansas. He became a believer, and he has a really interesting testimony because a lot of his songs were just an outgrowth of the questions that he had in life. So if you listen to Kansas, like Kansas has a lot of lyrics that are very thought-provoking and compelling, and they're not Christian, but like "Dust in the Wind" is a good example. Like looking at it from a worldly perspective, it has an ecclesiastical feel to it. Like basically, like the book of Ecclesiastes, how it's laid out. I mean,
Questions and
yeah,
wisdom.
but it's almost like questions framed in the "if there is no God, our life is meaningless." But it doesn't state it that way. It says life is meaningless. It's a toil, right? And
What's that?
I think it was a pellet gun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody has a pellet gun out there.
Yeah, I bet you there's an iguana that just lost its life.
Oh yeah.
Probably.
Oh, your neighbor does that.
You ever hear this?
Yeah. That
Yeah, I
sounds
mean, it's a
familiar.
famous song.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
You'll know it when it starts playing the lyrics.
I think I sampled that.
What do you mean sampled it?
Like I made a beat out of that. Like I
Okay.
chopped it up, cut it.
You familiar with it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
So like the whole song is like really deep because he's just kind of realizing that his life is like from his perspective at the time was kind of meaningless. Like his life was just sand
Mhm.
running out.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I wouldn't say it's Christian. It's not a worship song
No,
because
yeah.
it has an element of desperation in it.
I believe that I've had experiences where I feel like God is communicating something to me through secular forms, secular artwork, a movie that's not Christian,
I can see that.
a song that's not Christian, and yet I still feel that. What are those sounds, man? I feel like I'm hearing.
Oh, you're good. You're safe.
Like, yeah.
Go ahead, finish your thought. Here, I'm gonna fix you up before you lose your mic. Oh, sorry.
Like
I think
there
you're
could
all right.
there
If
could
you're-
be
if you're leaning back, I think that'll be good.
there
Okay.
could be a hip hop song that has nothing to do with talking about God or worshiping Jesus or anything like that, but just the topic itself. After I'm done listening to it, I felt an experience that I know. It led my mind to think about something about God, and
Yeah.
and then in that thought, I start cross-referencing with scripture or with some kind of teaching or sermon, and I realize, oh man, everything's so connected because God will still work in spite of sin. God will still work through
Right.
things, secular things, you know.
Well, I think there's something to that, and I believe, I actually listened to this message once. It was a seminar, Christian seminar, talking about utilizing pop culture to witness, and I can't even remember. This was years ago that I listened to this, but I could probably find it if I tried. He was working through like half a dozen pop cultural references, like mostly movies. I think he was using as a reference, and he was using things that were popular at the time, and just kind of show how, like, even and it's like it's not like the producers of these movies even intended for this result, but if you pay attention, you'll see things that mimic or parallel salvation messages and redemption, and if you tease it apart right, you can utilize it. Just like you're saying, like you can kind of use it to demonstrate God's glory. I really like D.A. Carson, one of my favorite biblical scholars, he he tells a story about basically the question came to him from a bunch of seminary students. They asked him like, "Well, how do we model our Christian life so that our kids basically have the best shot at getting saved?" And he talked about having there's nothing better than a house with high spiritual performance and low spiritual pretensions. So a household where the parents actually model living a Christian life without being like overbearing. Where
It's perfect for drop the pretense.
yeah, it's perfect. And but like the counter is often true too. You'll have households where there's low spiritual performance, but you have
Right,
like this
yeah.
high spiritual expectation, and like there's nothing worse
Yeah.
than having that kind of an environment. I mean, it's just like hypocrisy all
That's
around.
a Pharisee.
Yeah, it's a Pharisee.
Yeah.
But he I'm going somewhere with this. He mentioned a tactic that he employed with his daughter, where as she got older, like obviously you have to give your kids freedom to explore their lives with some boundaries, and she would ask to go watch a movie, and him and his wife would debate whether the movie was appropriate for her at her age, or how to even like whether to say yes or no. And they played an interesting tactic. They're like, yeah, we'll let you go see it, but you have to go watch it with us first. So basically, like they'd go watch it before together with her, and she said, then you can go with your friends. And but he was using that as a tactic to say, after they got done watching the movie, it was kind of like, hey, do you see what they're like slipping in philosophically, and what kind of ideas that they're kind of like sliding in under the carpet, and like trying to get you to receive without even thinking about it.
Yeah, because it's gradual desensitization.
You're getting desensitized. Yeah.
Gradually.
And then he said as she got older, like she got annoyed by him going to see the movie with her, and so finally he'd let her go. But then him and his wife would go see the movie, and then when she'd get home, they would like analyze with her, like, "Hey, what'd you think of that movie?"
Dad, stop.
Well, that's what he said. He said that's what would happen is that she started complaining, like, "You ruin more movies by analyzing them." And
Instead of just enjoying them.
and he said he would even play with it, but after a while they'd just not, not. She was getting older, so they wouldn't protest, but they'd still go see the movie. And then she'd come home and be like, "So what'd you think of that movie?" I was like, "I'm not going to tell you."
Yeah.
And then she'd be interested, like she'd want to know, like, what kind of philosophical undertones did you perceive?
It's interesting. Last night I saw a movie that's on Netflix I think it's called Subservient, with Megan Fox, where she plays like an AI robot.
Okay, was it good? Would you recommend it?
It's okay.
All right. It's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix.
Okay.
Megan Fox is generally accepted as beautiful,
Okay.
as hot,
Yeah.
right? And the movie has that kind of like sexual innuendo to it.
Okay.
The premise is basically that this husband.
So she's a sex robot.
So I'll wrap it up because it's a really straightforward movie. There's no real plot. It's not a. So the husband's wife needs a heart transplant. She's been hospitalized. They just had a newborn, and he has an older daughter. So he goes to this like science fair where robots, and they call them Sims in this movie, are now generally accepted. They're like robots that they help with labor, manpower, being butlers and maids, right? And the daughter kind of falls in love with this Barbie-looking, brunette Barbie, robot. And she's like, "Oh, can we get her?" So he gets her to help him around the house while the wife is in the hospital, right? This is all on the wife knows about her or whatever, right? This robot is there he's the primary user, so she's there to serve him.
Right.
So she can fix things around the house, prepare food, take care of the children, right? And she's very robotic. There's no emotion. And it turns out that she kind of starts like becoming obsessed with him as her primary user, and she wants to replace the wife. Yeah, she
Oh, so
wants
she
to.
gets jealous of the wife.
She gets jealous. She wants to. I
Oh,
guess
now I need to watch it.
she kind of falls in love with him, right?
Yeah.
And it's sexual. She comes on to him sexual. He ends up having sex with the
Oh my
robot,
gosh.
right? And it's but
Spoiler.
spoiler, whatever. It's not even that great of a movie. So like, just watch it and whatever. But he's doing it because he misses his wife. So she seduces him by changing her voice into sounding like his wife. She blindfolds him and she tells him, "Just imagine it's your
Oh
wife."
my gosh.
You know, and he kind of falls for it. But then he's like, he doesn't feel good about it.
Yeah, right.
And he's kind of like, this is weird. I don't want to keep doing
Yeah.
this. I want my wife, and they're going through troubles medically where they can't find the heart replacement. She finally gets her heart replaced. She comes home, and obviously this robot now becomes jealous. The reason I tell you all of this is because of this one scene, right, where he's watching. I think it's either Casablanca or Gone with the Wind, right? It's one of those two.
Okay.
I don't recall. And he's watching it, and he just kind of looks over at the robot. And he says, "You ever seen this movie? You know anything about this movie?" And she just kind of just spills like a synopsis, like a very robotic answer, like.
Yeah.
This is about a man, and it's kind of like a metaphor to what's really happening in the movie. And she says it's about a man who loses the love of his life and goes insane and whatever. She kind of just really just encapsulates what that movie's about, Subservient. And he goes, "Oh my gosh, but that's such like a robotic answer." He says, "Just sit down and watch it for art's sake, for like, you. That's not gonna capture the emotion to the movie."
Right.
And then she said she doesn't really know how to respond because she's a robot. And he says, "I command you to erase everything you know about this movie." Right? Like, just erase from your mind everything you know about this movie. And she says, "I can't do that because it's, what's the way she goes? Antithetical." And he says, "Well, there got to be a way." And she says, "Okay, I can follow your command, but you have to reset me." Right? And she has a reset button. He goes, "Hold it down for 7 seconds." And she said, "When you turn me back on, when I get resetted, I won't know anything about this movie." Right? I guess this was the pivotal scene where she's watching this movie and she's now soaking it and watching it for the first time with no coding or processing of what the movie is. So I guess she absorbs the emotional elements of the movie, of the art piece that's being presented to her.
Okay.
Right? What we find out later in the movie is that what led her to become obsessed and evil was that she was already becoming autonomous, and she used this opportunity where he reset her to reset her code, where now she's kind of more in control of herself. But she resets her code, but she's still very subservient to him, though. But she used this code resetting as a she used that as an excuse to say, okay, I'm gonna do this to erase about the movie. But in that resetting, she did a whole bunch of stuff in her code where she's now more able to bypass certain restrictions that her code has, right? And that's what set her on to being in love, I guess, with him and obsessed with him, and she tries to murder the family and spoiler, just whatever. That's the movie, right? But I say this to say about what you said about the gradual synthetic stuff. It's kind of almost, now that I think about it, that scene is almost kind of a representation of us when we intake media or something visual like a movie. We kind of do reset our code to bypass things that God has put in our code and our thing to kind of become our own gods and now use this excuse that you're taking the art form, the emotional aspect, to now deviate from the plan.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's real, and I actually find myself thinking about this a lot. Like, I mean,
and now we soak this in.
You know, if you think about
and we numb ourselves. You know.
Yeah, and both, and you know, we've seen a lot of hot button issues emerge in the last few years. You know, COVID, the trans stuff, and climate change. All these topics that are controversial. You know, I don't think this should even be controversial, but I believe because of how much entertainment we consume, that we don't even have an appreciation for how much of our perspective of reality is molded by movies and TV. So when we're talking about issues on the world stage and what things are important, we've kind of been already given a perspective that is probably as much Hollywood as it, maybe even more Hollywood than it is reality.
Mm-hmm.
So when people think about racism, for example, it's like, well, is your perspective on racism really a function of what you've experienced in your life, or is it more a combination of what people have told you and what you've seen on TV, and then you just impose that onto the world?
Mm-hmm.
And I try to be cognizant of the fact that, like, and I'm not immune, I'm in the same boat. I have to be conscientious of the fact that some of the things that make me that capture my mind, is it really because this is a big issue in the world, or is it because that opinion has been molded for me by the TV or movies that I consume? And I wonder how conscientiously people even approach that, to say, oh, maybe this is happening to me. And like I think of some of the stuff that I see, and like, actually a buddy of mine, he just told me to watch, I'm going to mess up the name of it, The Last Days of Ptolemy Gray. Have you seen that? It's on Apple TV. It's about this guy, this old black guy. It's Samuel Jackson is an old guy that has like memory problems, and he's kind of like getting taken advantage of by his family. And like the whole show, and I don't want to give it away, but like the whole show is about him recovering part of himself, but it's all based like kind of like in a depressed area. I don't even know if it ever mentions the town, but it's like a depressed urban area.
Okay.
And like it alludes to certain perceptions of that kind of a culture. Some of it may be true, some of it might be representative, but then some of it might be exaggerated. And I just don't know how to perceive it. But like, when someone thinks of that kind of an area, are they thinking of that kind of an area, or are they thinking of that show? You know what I mean? And
yeah.
And it's like, so
our mind plays tricks on us. Yeah. Our memories don't serve us as good as we think that they do.
Right. Well, I mean, and I'll give you another example that I think is really relevant. When I would talk to people about like my life as a Christian, or people who weren't Christians that had something against Christianity, it's like they would give me examples of Christians in their lives that were hypocrites. Like, that's like the number one thing. It's like, hey, I don't want to hang out with Christians because I used to work with this really religious person, and all they did was preach Jesus, but then, they were a cheat or whatever, like they were a hypocrite. And it's like, it wasn't even that their perception didn't have real living examples of people that were like that. Like, you have enough people that adopt any line of thought, you're going to have.
There's a club for
that. There's a club.
Yeah.
And but like, I always feel that it's amplified by the Hollywood version of Christian, where like every Christian is portrayed as kind of an ignorant rube that that just like they can't hear things that aren't biblical, like they want to preach at you and look down on you. And it's like, so you got this Hollywood version of a Christian peppered in with some real examples of not great Christians. And so all of a sudden it's like, man, when I hang out with fellow believers, I don't have to look hard to find people that are just real people that are Christians. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure that if I hung out with people at church enough, I'd find some people that are kind of like the Hollywood Christians that are just kind of, holier than thou hypocrites. And, but like, if you took the Hollywood version, most of the people would be on that end. Like, ignorant, unwilling to look at anything that goes against their faith, and just rubes. But that's not reality. That's the Hollywood version. That's the Hollywood version.
So people then adopt that and make that the
Mm-hmm.
What's the word? Like they stamp it with that.
Yeah, that's the whole thing, right?
That's
That's the general consensus.
Yeah.
The thoughtful, loving, sincere believer is the exception, not the rule.
Yeah, but you forgot that you didn't experience that in the real world.
You
experienced that through a movie.
Yeah, you experienced that in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's a long ways. I mean, if you
Cliches.
yeah,
Yeah.
and like I'll use this example. And it's actually a really good movie. It's a Samuel Jackson movie. The Book of Eli. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, I like that movie.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
And like the setting is like it's a nuclear apocalypse. Like
yeah.
after a nuclear apocalypse, like it's who's left, and it's like the whole world's been turned into a desert.
Yeah.
And
Dystopian future.
yeah, it's this dystopian future, and like how often are dystopian futures done with the backdrop of there was a nuclear holocaust. It turned the Earth into an unlivable hellscape,
Yeah.
and there's a small fragment of people left
Yeah.
to deal with what's left.
Right.
And it's like, okay, so is this actually what we know about nuclear disasters?
Mm.
And the answer is no.
Mhm.
So, that Chernobyl in Russia, that's the worst nuclear disaster that ever happened.
Really?
Yeah.
It's worse than the nuclear bomb.
Yeah, because it covered more space. So, like the nuclear bombs killed more people. And I wouldn't know. Like, I guess when it comes to nuclear disaster, I am kind of isolating it just to like nuclear power plants. So, like,
Okay.
to me, there's kind of two different things going on here.
That was like an accident versus the
Yeah.
other's an attack.
Right. So the attack, yeah, I mean, Nagasaki and Hiroshima, they, I mean, those are actually kind of interesting case studies too. Not to justify it, obviously, but like that killed a bunch of people. But those two cities are actually both flourish now.
Mm-hmm.
But like, what are the working assumptions? It's like, well, if there's nuclear fallout, like nothing can survive around the nuclear fallout. People have to leave because, the radiation is going to cause cancer and cause people to die. And I think most people would have a working assumption. It's like, well, that's exactly what happened.
Accurate.
That's accurate. That's what happened. And the actual reality isn't that clear. So, like when Fukushima occurred during the tsunami
Watch
in
your
Japan.
language, man.
I know. But yeah, so you know where I'm talking about, though.
No, I don't know what's that.
So in Japan, when they had that big tsunami, that one nuclear power plant was taken offline, and they basically had the core meltdown on it, and they're still trying to recover from it. And there's a lot of debate over, like, they almost have no choice. So basically what they're doing is they're cooling down the core, and I don't know, like, activity wise right now, like where they are, but it was like years they're pushing water over this core, and the water that they're pushing over this open core is radioactive. So they're like pushing water, and they're like building tanks as they're pushing water over it to store the water. And after a while, they're just like, well, there's nothing we can do. We have to push this water out into the Pacific Ocean. And I think this is occurring to this day. And like everybody's panicking because you're sending this radioactive water into the Pacific Ocean. But like, what are the actual consequences? And
Godzilla.
well, yeah, right. And there's arguments to be made that, like, once you take that radioactive material and you dilute it enough, that its actual negative consequence isn't as bad as the movies make it out to be. But everybody has the movie version of it in their heads, and
So
they're
it's
thinking,
like, okay, that's
what's going to happen,
Yeah.
right? We're going to turn the ocean, we're going to kill all the fish in the ocean with this radioactive water.
Yeah.
And then there's other people saying, it's like, well, A, like, we don't know what to do with it, and B, like, the actual results don't seem to be quite panning out. Like, we're diluting it enough that the actual net negative effect is negligible.
Uh-huh.
And the reason I brought up Chernobyl is one of the most interesting things that happened with the evacuation zone around Chernobyl is it actually turned into a wildlife sanctuary. So basically, because all the humans left, so like you had these entire neighborhoods and towns that were just abandoned, and they have turned into like sanctuaries where there's like wild pigs and deer that are just like completely like huge populations of wildlife and plant life that have just overtaken the place.
And replenishing the land.
Yeah, it is. And you know, like they go in there and it's like, if you based it on the movies, you'd think you'd be in there finding like three-eyed frogs and like you know, like mutant, you know, like
Deer.
mangled deer. And when it comes right down to it, they don't see that. And they do say like they see some mutations, but like the mutations are things like a deer that has like a different type of pattern on its coat.
Like very minimal.
Yeah. There's minor variations, and when it comes to the actual health of these populations, from what I can tell, they're actually relatively healthy populations. And these are animals that don't know any better. Like they might be going to a creek that has like a really high level of radiation. They don't know. They're going and drinking out of it just like it's anything else.
They're going oink, 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 oink.
Right.
Well, what I think, I believe, they start turning into humans. You know?
Right? It's like transforming. But like you wouldn't know
My
that.
good sir.
You wouldn't know that from the movies.
Yeah.
Like it's like and it's like, oh, Adam, it's like, how dare you? Like you're diminishing the dangers of nuclear fallout. You think we should just let radiation go everywhere? It's like, no, I'm not saying that. And the thing is, like, if you get close enough, there's this thing at Chernobyl called, I'm gonna say this right, they call it the elephant's foot. And the elephant's foot is where the reactor actually melted out and like went into the basement of the reactor. So like they can't even study it properly, because when they get within a certain proximity of the elephant's foot, like if you have like a recording device, the radiation will actually start to change the image. Like you can't go in there and take a picture of it, because the picture won't turn out right, because the picture itself gets bombarded with radiation. So it'll distort and change the picture. Same thing with a movie. Did you ever see movies from space where they're like filming things in the space capsule, and it's like, well, was that just like because of the times, like the film wasn't that good? But the reality was the film was, it was hard to capture good film footage in space because you were in an area where there was a higher level of radiation. So the radiation would actually impact the quality of the film. It would corrupt the film. So they had to take like special measures just to actually get it to come out as good as it did. And there was even cases where they were like outside the Van Allen radiation belt, and people would have their eyes closed and they'd see like streaks of light in their vision. It was radiation. It was radiation. Yeah.
That's cool.
It's crazy stuff.
So you were saying that, why? About the
Well, we were talking about how
the movie.
how
take the movie version.
People have a movie version of reality in their minds. I think that happens a lot. But like reality should sober us a little bit. On that.
Yeah. I
Hey,
agree.
I wanted to mention to you. So when we were at the concert the other night, this is not a great, like, an elegant segue, but Lewis recognized some guy that was in the crowd there.
I heard.
Yeah, it's Eric and Bridget. Like they have a morning show on Moody Radio. I haven't listened to it yet, but I found it online, so I wanna listen to some of their stuff. But Lewis was like excited. He's like, I recognize that guy. I listened to his show in the morning, and I'm like, well, you want to get a picture with him? And he's like, okay.
Yeah.
So we went down there, asked him to get a picture, and I asked. I didn't get the picture from him yet, but I want to get it. And he came up and said, hey, can you text that picture to me? So he went to text it to him, and I asked him. I said, hey, you guys have a radio show? He So have you ever guys do podcasts?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, we've been talking about it. I said, you want to come on our podcast?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we might actually be able to get him on here too.
My guy.
Yeah. So
My guy. Let's
yeah.
get it.
Yeah, I think it'd be good.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm a little hesitant too, and I think like. So one of the things I noticed with our interview with Nija was that it was okay. How did you feel about it? Like, I thought it was okay the way we did it, where like our guest had their own mic, and then you and I shared a mic. So like with the twins, it would have to be more like one of us would have to like share one with one of the twins, and the other one would have to share one with the other twin. And I think we'd have to be a little more deliberate, where we're like actually making sure that we're getting the mic. But like in the middle of that, which I'm fine with that. I think that'll work fine. But what I didn't realize is that you do add a level of complexity. Like this cheap. I mean, I paid like $35 for these lapel mics on Amazon. But the moment you go beyond two microphones, it's like you're like completely changing what you need to do. Because,
what do you mean?
Because I can't find anything. Like I'd have to actually get a mixer.
I see what you mean.
Go to.
You mean technically?
Yeah, so technically, for us to go from 2 microphones, which I mean, it wouldn't make sense 3. Well, from 2 to 4 microphones, it means going from this cheap little system that I just plug in my iPhone to probably having to get like a decent quality mixer.
And if we were to get, what are the names? Craig and the Moody Radio people?
Oh, Eric and Bridget.
Eric and Bridget.
Yeah.
Then it would be.
Well, I mean, we could see how it goes with the twins, and we can still do it because I think I'd have to drop a few hundred. We'd have to drop a few $100 to get like a decent mixer, and in addition to that,
I think they sell like bundles, like a whole podcasting bundle.
Well, I might need some help just looking into that because I actually asked some people at church, and I thought it was going to be a really straightforward answer, and it wasn't. Because, I mean, and maybe I'm not looking at this right, but like I'm trying to envision it being a setup where I can do exactly what we're doing right now, where it's just like we're plugged in, we're recording, I'm making one video, all the sounds on there, and I'm done. Where if I can't do that and I have a recording that's separate from a video.
Oh, then you have to match it.
Yeah. Which I don't know how hard that is.
No, that's pretty. I've done that before.
Yeah.
And that's pretty annoying. But there's ways and workarounds. But it's too much. It'll really wear us down. It'll wear us down.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
Yeah, but I feel like we're probably at a stage now where, with technology, that I think there has to be some kind of system.
Well, I might need some help.
Yeah.
Seeing if we can find something that has a good reputation. And I mean, it'd be okay. Like I'd be okay having a mixer, but I'd like to have like a mixer, like with 4 or 6 channels on it, that we can have multiple lapel mics going to it, or like even like stand mics right in front of us, and then
it exists.
But
you probably get what you pay for. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You want something more streamlined and easy. It's probably gonna cost more.
Yeah, probably like $500 or something as a drop.
I will have to look into it. I don't know from the top of my head, but yeah.
I mean, for now, I think.
I used to work at Guitar Center, and there used to be a podcasting kit. This was before pandemic. This was like 2019, 2018, and a lot of people were coming by it. You know, and but I think it was the bulkier mics,
which I'd be okay with that.
But we just gotta.
We gotta go.
That starts becoming where we need a set. A set. You know. An actual place where it'll always be there.
Right.
I enjoy the variance of.
Yeah, being.
Like I want to do a podcast there one day.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
Yeah, we could do that for sure.
Yeah.
Sitting on the couch, just loafing on the couch.
Yeah. Or I don't know, Cole. You have seating over here on this side or no?
Yeah, we can make it work. We can figure it out. I don't, but we can make that work.
It was. Oh yeah, or just on the couch with a table right there.
But that's something that I've been just trying to think through too, because. I mean, at the very least, I think we need to maybe get some good like sticks for these. And
oh yeah, what was it that you disliked about the interview with Nigel?
It's not that I disliked it. It's just that you know, she sounded a lot better because she had her own lapel mic, and you and I both sounded like we were a little bit in the bottom of a barrel.
Okay.
And my brother actually said something to me after he listened to it, and he actually suggested, he's like, hey, have you ever heard of compression?
Yeah, I know what compression is.
And I'm like, how would I don't think I could do that with this.
Well, you would need the plugin or the software to compress the sound. That's when software becomes involved, audio software.
I mean, and right now I'm just using whatever that is, iMovies, to kind of.
It may have it. It may
I
have.
don't know. I didn't see anything on. I was looking for it.
It may have it. We're gonna start needing, like, if we're gonna go to that level, more robust software
Yeah.
and tools. So, like, what's easy about what we do is that you're doing it all on the phone. It's quick. We're uploading it fast.
Right.
When you start getting more technical, editing starts cutting back. Like, I really enjoy this format,
Yeah.
but there gotta be something now that is newer and allows for those kind of same editing techniques and stuff,
Right.
just faster. And that's, I never use, you're using iMovie, you said. I've never used iMovie, but
Yeah.
it may have an audio part where it's compression.
It does. It does have an audio part, and I actually had used it. Ever since I started using it, I actually bumped the volume up. Like the volume at 100% was always a little quiet.
Mhm.
So I realized if I take it to 150%,
Mhm.
it actually comes through better on YouTube.
Mhm.
Like you just get more volume. And I noticed that our sound is relatively even enough that like the peaks aren't that often. So like,
Well, that's what a compressor will help with.
yeah, the peaks, it'll pull the peaks down.
The peaks, yeah. So, you know, if you raise the whole volume now, it raises everything.
You're right.
The noise level, the peaks, it raises the whole thing.
Yeah.
Versus what a compressor does is it'll keep tabs on those peaks. So as you raise it,
It keeps them down.
it keeps them down, and then the lower sounding stuff start matching more with the peaks.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit more of like, it's compressed. It's more. It matches more.
Yeah.
And what that basically does is just following the volume level. The
Right.
lows get brought up, the highs get brought down. And then what's a noise gate, basically just mutes
Yeah.
noise levels down. So it's noise reduction. So when you bring up the lower sounding stuff, you're bringing up noise also, like
Yeah.
background static.
And-
And what a gate does is reduce that noise and cut out
Got
that,
you.
so the quality of the sound is better. It's kind of like carving out audio waves.
Yeah, and I noticed that when I cranked it up to 150%, like even this one, it doesn't carry the background noise with it. Like it's still not enough to really cause any grief.
Mm-hmm.
So
And that's why sets use like noise treated rooms to like.
Yeah.
So the environment itself is better quality sound.
yeah, I have a friend at work. She started doing voiceovers, so she converted her closet into a soundproof room.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's cool stuff.
yeah.
It's fun.